Peace, y'all. Welcome back to my channel. For those who are new, I'm Dante Bailey, aka codename Fuzzy Slippers. There's quite a few different things I like to do on this channel. One of the things in particular, I had a lot of people ask me, am I going to bring back the podcast? Now I already know what you're thinking. Men in microphones. This, not that, trust me. It was back in 2020, pandemic, there was a lot of anxiety and stress flying around, a lot of uncertainty when COVID first hit. I wasn't exempt from that. So I started what was really considered a mental health podcast. It was really more of a storytelling podcast. But the concept of it was that I was going back through my own memory banks and kind of telling stories about my childhood and thinking about ways that some of the things that I experienced as a kid may have affected my mindset or outlook as an adult. And I was kind of really trying to self-therapize because I didn't have access to traditional therapy just yet. So with that in mind, I wake up 2-3 in the morning and just get to talking. And I decided to make it public, and it actually caught on for a while and people really enjoyed it. But I had to stop because I got access to traditional therapy. And I just didn't think it was responsible to be trying to self-therapize while also in therapy. And I definitely didn't want to share the things that I was experiencing in therapy in real time. So here I am in hindsight now, coming back. People want me to start it back up, and I plan to do it in a slightly different way this time around. But before I do, I just wanted to upload some of these old episodes and see if you guys enjoy. So join the journey with me and welcome to Back-N-The Daze. I hope you enjoy. This is something new that I'm trying right now. This is a brand new podcast by me, Dante Bailey. I'm your host. And this is called Back-N-The Daze. Back-N-The Daze is in, that moment of nostalgia that we really trying to tap in with when we think about better days. I've been going through a lot of emotional changes recently, and it's wild because I the way that I try to cope with things when things get fucked up is I try to tell myself, well, you gotta appreciate the present, we're stuck in this space where the only things that we do is we look ahead to the future and say, I can't wait until I get to this place where I can achieve this or do that and things will get better. Or we reminisce on the past and we say, damn man, I just wish things felt like that. Remember how good it was? For me, it'd be days college experiences with my boys and shit, and we used to ride up to Morgan State and Temple up in Philly. I'm from DC, Maryland in particular. Let me make that clear. I live in Los Angeles, California right now, and when you're out of town you say DC even if it's PG or Virginia or whatever, but just to make the distinction. But we used to ride up out of town and shit like that, and I'm sure between the 4 or 5 of us we didn't have more than probably $60-$70 to our name, but we would find a way to gas that motherfucker up, you know what I'm saying? And we'd get on the road. We had the best times, you know what I'm saying? And it's something about that. We was probably about 20, 21 at the time, 29 now, and we would be having the best time of our lives, meeting girls and getting Philly cheesesteaks and shit, and just learning about different cultures of people from different places, because we had a car that we could just gas up and go, and that feeling of nostalgia isn't a bad thing. Sometimes we think about the idea of well, you'll never be able to go back, so it's better to just focus on the present. And I think that's what I've been trying to do, but I think it's more important to tap in with yourself, and when you go through traumatic experiences or just major transitions in your life, sometimes you got to look at how you got to where you're going, and what things took place along the way that helped you to get to where you are today, And as you start to unpack those things, it becomes its own form of self-therapy, you know what I'm saying? And that's what this podcast is an attempt to be, It's not so much going back and reminiscing on days that I can't get back. It's not about going backwards and trying to live in a moment where I was in my glory days or anything like that. It's so much more about just unpacking what life was about before adulting, before
bills, before liking girls, before feelings, before the frustrations of having to keep a roof over your fucking head, make some money, before society stripped your confidence away. And if they did, how did they do it, and just going back into your memory bank. So I don't know, man. For me, I feel like it's just a necessary journey to talk some of them things out, and God knows my black ass ain't going to nobody's therapist to do it, you feel me? So what better way to do it than to turn it into an artistic process? And for me, that's this podcast. So this is Back-N-The Daze, and I hope you guys can respect my vulnerability, appreciate my vulnerability, and maybe it makes you want to tap in with yourself to do some of the same, But yeah, we're gonna talk this thing through. Talk through some of these memories. This first episode right here, this is called My Life as Michael Jackson. Enjoy. So let's get into it. My life as Michael Jackson. Nobody ever wants to be seen as someone else. You want to be you. You want to be the best version of you that you can be, by all means. You want to have your own identity. You want to be the person who people look at and they say, yeah, that's Dante. I didn't really get that same luxury growing up, and maybe at some fault of my own, but I shit you not, every single day of my life, from about 6 years old to about 13 or 14, I couldn't go anywhere. And I mean anywhere. This is literally no exaggeration. 365 days in a year. It maybe was 3 or 4 days collectively that I didn't hear someone stop me in a grocery store, in the middle of the road, rolling down their window, at a football game, on the train or bus, and they said, oh my God, yo, do y'all see this? Yo, do you know you look exactly like, and then all of a sudden I would jump in and at the exact same time say, Michael Jackson. And they'd be like, yes, you heard this before, huh? Like someone said this to you. And I'm like, come on, man. Like, again? How do you think I feel, man? Of course I've heard it every single day. Every single fucking day. It's crazy, man. Like, how does identity shape your confidence, your outlook, your sense of self? And how do the experiences that we have as a child bleed into our adulthood? I wonder about shit like that. I mean, today as an adult, I suffer from a lack of self-esteem. Not gonna lie, and like I said, I appreciate the opportunity to be vulnerable on a platform such as this. Doing a podcast, because I can speak some truths that I otherwise would have usually probably kept to myself, but it feels good to release those and get those out. You know what I'm saying? And one of my things is that I really, really suffer with confidence a lot, or I have in the past. I'm doing much better now, honestly. I practice self-love on a constant basis, day to day, in and out. You know what I'm saying? And it's a work in progress all the time, and we have life-altering events that shift our focus and make us question the things that we already know. But, where did it root from? How did we get to this point where, or I should say, how did I get to this point where I question whether or not I feel cool enough, or, I dress nice enough or attractive enough or anything like that, You would think that it would be the biggest confidence boost in the world. As a kid, everywhere you go, people are excited to look at you and talk to you and whatever, and here I was, I hated it. I really hated the attention. And I was shy. I was a super shy tourist kid, the kid who would hide behind his parents' legs when somebody says, "And what's your name?" You know. But once I get to know you, I was a ball of activity and liveliness. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I was so excited to talk. You couldn't shut me up once you got me started talking. But shit, getting me to talk that first time was hard. I think I've always been conflicted in this kind of way where like I want to stand out and be something different, but I don't want to stand out too much where there's too much. Like I always want to play the back. And as a kid, I think that materialized through my hair, you know? I remember waking up every morning. I usually would have some sort of little dookie braids or something in my head. You know what I'm saying? Eventually I learned, I used to go to my mother to have her do it. Cause if I went to sleep on that afro, I was going to wake up and go through it when we had to pick it out. Naps just ripping out of my head. It was just the hardest thing ever. So eventually I had to start like braiding my hair before I went to sleep, like 4 little big ass braids. And we would put pink lotion in it. I don't know if y'all ever had the pink lotion. Man, that was real for black folks. You know what I'm saying? Everybody, all my brothers never even had long hair or nothing like that. But they put that pink lotion in their hair and combed that joint out, brushed it down. It was something. I haven't used pink lotion in years, but that itself for me is nostalgic. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, man, we had used the pink lotion in the hair, comb it out real good, pick it. Take me a good time. It's nice and soft and fluffy and everything like that. And you put it into 4 little braids so you can go to sleep peacefully and wake up in the morning. It would still just make your job a little easier before you got to go to school. And I remember I would take them out and I would spend at least like 30, 40 minutes just picking away after the shower in the mirror, trying to get that perfect shape, that perfect round shape that would make me stand out and be ideal. You know what I'm saying? And it's funny because I think, for a kid, that's big. You know, we're trying to figure out what the world is around us. I feel like as a kid trying to figure out what the world is, you don't really know too much about who you are. You're kind of guessing and you're figuring out. And it's real easy to become a follower in a world full of, endless influences. And for me in particular, I had to have my shit together. I had to have my look. That was my thing. I had to get my steez right, even as a kid. Before I was trying to figure out the who am I, and I was figuring out the what this is, I was still like, I gotta have my look right. And that afro was a huge part of my identity. It was a huge part of shaping my confidence. I felt good when I got that perfect shape, because I used to see shit like clips from Soul Train and, you could flip through your parents' photo albums from back in the day. Everybody got them photo albums with the Polaroids and everything else in them. And them joints had these pictures from the 70s and 80s and shit. And everybody got their afros and they look so cool. They just look so proud to be black, I'm from the DMV area. I'm from PG County, Maryland, right next to DC. And, we have an extreme amount of pride for where we from, Everything that we do is somehow rooted in blackness to some extent, It's just a different kind of swagger. It's the way we talk, the way we move, the way our culture is. It's Chocolate City, you know what I'm saying? Like, so growing up around that, you got brothers and uncles and parents and shit like that, you know what I'm saying, who teach you to be proud of who you are and your culture. And if you learn anything about the Panthers, which I was exposed to shit like that super early in my family, you know what I'm saying? Like, all you see is these beautiful ass black afros and, you know what I'm saying, this pride for your culture. I love that. Even as a little kid, I'm talking about as young as 6 years old, I had to have that afro right. It was me on every level. And it's funny because I really didn't mind being referenced as Michael Jackson everywhere that I went as a child if the exchange was that I also got to be me, You can say, oh, that's Michael Jackson. He looks just like Michael Jackson. But in my heart of hearts, I knew, shit, nigga, you looking at Dante. That's the best Dante there is. You know what I'm saying? I'm on my shit. I know that much. You feel me? So, it's wild when you be in situations like what I was in, and this is such a huge part of your culture. Everybody knows you. It's Dante with the afro, this and that, boom, boom, boom. For me, man, you know, I loved feeling so connected to my identity. But then there comes a place where your identity is challenged. And for me, that happened a little too early as well. The year 2000, we moved to New Carrollton, and I was going to Lamont Elementary School, neighborhood school, right behind my house. My middle brother was going to Charles Carroll Middle School, and around that time, there was a gang called the MS-13, an El Salvadorian gang, and, you know, I guess as a part of their recruitment, they were really going for kids in middle school. I guess that's the best time to catch them. And I mean, the middle school that my brother was going to was off the goddamn chain, you know. It was terrible. Like, my parents literally used to say it was like kids hanging off the ceiling in there. And, you know, my brother navigated it fine and everything like that. But I've always been, I guess, the softer child, you know. I definitely wasn't as street smart as both of my brothers. As a younger kid, it only became when I got a little older that I got that way. But as a younger kid, you know, they used to worry about me, like I was too soft to exist in certain environments. I wasn't really built like that. And, you know, they saw the kids who I was hanging out with when I was at that school at Lamont Elementary. And it's funny because they, you know, parents can kind of see what's happening before things actually happen. And they knew where my best friends was headed, you know, and needless to say, one of them was, he ended up going to Hampton. The other one ended up dying. The other one ended up doing life in jail. And then the other one was in and out of jail continuously. And I mean, he looks bad. Like, he looks rough, you know? And I don't know. It's funny how your parents can like sniff that on. And then there's me, innocent little Dante with the big eyes and the afro, you know? And my parents sent me to private school, with the help of my grandmother to be able to afford it. They had me transfer to St. Jerome's Catholic school in Hyattsville. I just remember, like, you know, I always felt so much pride with my identity. No matter how shy I was confident for sure. No question about it. I was always confident because I knew that hair was hitting. I was like, hey, I don't know what you got to say about me, but you're not going to say nothing about this fro. This fro is hitting. You hear me? And everybody respected it and loved it. But when I went to private school, I'll never forget, there was this first day, I got in there and I had my afro and it was perfect. Everything was, I wasn't used to wearing uniforms. It was weird. I had to wear these damn light baby blue polo short sleeve shirt with a navy blue kind of chino or dress pants. And we couldn't even wear goddamn sneakers or nothing. It was like these hush puppies. It was like these ugly, hideous suede brown shoes that everybody kind of had, or they had to be black, and we had to wear a belt with our shirts tucked in. It was just no flavor to it. You know what I'm saying? I think maybe the year before or 2 years before, I had just got my first Iversons, because, you know, Iverson was the man back there. Or, you know, I had my little pumps, my Reebok pump shoes, and I wasn't the most into clothes because I was a Kmart kid, but, you know, them shoes, you used to get excited for some new shoes. You know what I'm saying? Like, because that's what you do when you grow up black and you got some swag and everything like that. And I went to school on this first day of school, man, and I tell you, I never forget. I'm walking through the halls and it's big as hell and it just feels so empty. so dry, so stiff. It's dark. It doesn't feel welcoming. The only thing that was cool was that my cousin, who's a year older, my cousin was a lot more like my brother than my actual brothers. We used to hang all the time and shit like that. And I would only see him in passing, but I used to get so excited to see him. And now I was going to school with him, so I was like, damn, I'm gonna get to see this nigga every day. This is that shit. But that first day I went into class, you know, everybody's looking at me and everything. I'm the new student, and there was a teacher there. She wasn't a nun, but she definitely could have been for the way she was moved. She conservative than a motherfucker. And I remember she sat there, she looked, and she touched my hair. I was like, what the fuck? Did you just touch my hair? She touched my hair and she said, we're going to have to do something about this. I'm like, hello? Nice to meet you. Welcome to class. Are you nervous? I know this is a new environment for you. I thought these would have been more welcoming terms to coming into a new class, into a new school. But instead, I was greeted with, we're going to have to do something about this. So, you know, I'm looking at my dad like, I know you're not about to let her do that shit. What's up? And I just remember being so confused when he didn't have my back. It was kind of like, oh yeah, we can do, you know, he's making it seem like he's going to get a haircut. And I've been telling him he needs to get a haircut. And I'm like, yo, what the fuck is that? You know what I'm saying? And don't get me wrong. And my father, he's old school and he was never the biggest fan of my afro, but I think anything that made me happy and made me confident, he was for. But it was just wild to me as a kid, you know, in the face of whiteness. And we've talked about this because I made a short film. I'm a student at USC. I'm a filmmaker, and I made a film called Lemon Pepper. That's about this whole experience. And I showed it to my father. We had this conversation. I told him how that really affected me as a kid. But, you know, he was always on some shit like, man, you need a haircut. Man, you need a clean cut. It's this weird thing that we accept where we say like, oh, a haircut is supposed to look cleaner. And in truth, it's us assimilating the whiteness, you know, because that short grain of hair before it starts to curl looks closer to the texture of white people's hair. I mean, there's no other way to call it. It's inherent racism. But what fucked me up even more was that the reason that they told me that I was going to have to cut my hair wasn't because of it just being like, oh, a cleaner look and a uniform kind of thing or a dress code. It was just because of the fact that my hair was considered to be a distraction to the learning environment, which I'm looking at these white boys in class and some of them got long hair. And I'm looking like, well, what the fuck is that? Because once again, their hair gets long and it just falls. My hair gets long and it blows up and curls. And I guess in some regard, maybe their justification was, you know, these are kids. Like, have you ever had to try to deal with the fucking group of 20, 12-year-olds or 8-year-olds or whatever? Like, it's not easy, you know? Like, I got enough problems on my hand already. I don't need your hair creating more of a distraction in class for these students who mostly haven't seen nobody's hair look like that before, you know? It's not like my school was all white, but it was damn sure mostly white. So, you know, that was its own frustrating kind of thing. But I just remember thinking to myself, like, yo, in hindsight, what I probably would have articulated as a kid was like, yo, you're sending me into an unsafe environment. You're sending me into an environment that's not welcoming me for who I am and what I am naturally, which is a young black man, a proud to be black ass nigga at that. You know what I'm saying? I didn't know how to articulate that at that age, but I damn sure felt it, you know? And it fucked with me a little bit. And what fucked with me worse is that there was another kid who went to that school he was black, but he was mixed race. I believe he had a white mother. And he had a little afro too. Nothing as fine and luxurious as my own. Nothing as big as my own, but it's a small little fro, you know. And I'm looking at him thinking like, all right, well, he gonna have to cut his shit. You know, like if I gotta cut mine, that shit gotta go. Everybody gotta cut their shit. And I'll never forget, he came in there that next week. My hair was cut. I was sick about it. And this man had cornrows. I said, oh no, hell no. They told me I couldn't braid my shit. But he kind of had seniority. He had been in this school for a minute. You know, he had been around and, you know, as a kid, you don't know how to articulate it once again. But I'm thinking to myself, like, you got a white mom. You know, that doesn't make you less than. It doesn't make you less black or anything like that. But I'm like, you know, y'all dealing with his white mom. Y'all dealing with my black dad. It's different. The way you gonna talk, the way you gonna demand certain things be done to their child is different. It just is. It's inherent racism. And this is how I was kind of introduced to stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? So that type of shit fuck with your confidence. And then you already got these kids kind of talking reckless because they haven't seen nobody hair look like yours like that for real. So they got questions and saying hella microaggression based kind of things, not even realizing that they just kids and they're curious too. I don't blame them now and as an adult, but as a kid, you kind of looking like, yo, you do know I will slap the shit out you, right? You know, I thought I was a little badass coming into private school because I knew why I was being sent to private school. And in my mind, I was like, well, I'm not even bad. So why are y'all sending me to private school? Like I didn't do shit. So it was almost like a form of rebellion that when I got there, I was going to try to be the toughest nigga they had ever seen. Like, yeah, I come from public school. Y'all don't even know what it is. Y'all private school. And the irony in that is you get there and you there with these white boys and Asian kids and all types of other cultures. And you kind of like, yeah, you know, not literally, but you in your mind, you kind of like, yeah, I slap the shit out of anybody. And they looking at you and they kind of like, dude, we don't care. And you're like, oh, you don't? True. Well, well, yeah, I'm tougher than you. They're like, okay. And then you start to realize, oh shit, this little coping mechanism that I got not working. I guess I got to figure something else out. And you just start to be whoever it is that you want to be, you know? And that's how I started to become Dante as the world knows it today. That's how I started to become the version of me that was comfortable with whatever the fuck I wanted to be. And nobody could tell me otherwise. You know, you just gonna get what you get. And it's just that, you know. Private school for me taught me good study habits, but it introduced me to all types of things that made me less confident, you know. We had a lot of systemic racism in that school system. I remember specifically in my history class, there was an assignment, I guess we were learning about like class systems and shit like that. And I remember they specifically, based off of our grades and how we were doing, they created a caste system that they put up on the board. And it was basically like the masters, the indentured servants, the slaves. It was like the overseers. It was like some, you know, whatever the some sort of breakdown like that and shit like that. And I just remember they had slaves up there. And of course, the slaves in the class, based off of their grades and how they were doing, were all black or people of color. And as a kid, I'm sitting there looking like, yo, what the fuck is that? I didn't know how upset I was just yet, but I knew it didn't make me comfortable. I remember my parents had to come up to the school and have a conversation with the teacher about that shit because that shit was wild. And, you know, my mother gave him the most professional cussing out. You know, black mothers, man, they'll call you a bitch ass nigga and a motherfucker and all this other type of shit and won't use one curse word. They'll just, and because my mother was a bad boy, I tell you, she was intelligent. My mother didn't finish college, but she's one of the smartest fucking people. And it's funny because she was, it was a weird kind of complex because she didn't finish college, but even at her job, she was making so much more than people who did go to college. There was so much like jealousy and shit like that around. She's the only person who knew how to do the job that she did, you know? And it's wild because I remember she came up there and it was like, I felt so good knowing that she was defending me and the other black students in class from shit like this. But there were just so many instances. A lot of them I forgot. And, you know, a part of this podcast is me being able to try to go back through my memory bank and remember some of these things and unpack them, you know. But I just know it was a lot of problematic shit that was going on at that damn school, and maybe some that I need to talk more to my parents about. But it always had to do with the way that they were treating the black students and what type of impact that has on a black boy's confidence, you know? When I was at St. Jerome's Catholic school, I was getting C's and D's, B's at the highest on my grades. And I mean, I was staying up until fucking 3 a.m. at like 12 years old. Just, I remember literally crying, just like, I don't get it. Like trying to understand the shit. And I've always needed a little extra help. I'm not going to lie. You know what I'm saying? I've always needed a little bit of extra help in school. I had tutors when I was really young in public school. And they said I used to talk too much. I would never be able to go back and prove it, but I think maybe I had an undiagnosed case of ADHD or something like that. It just, I couldn't really focus. I was more interested in everything else going on but the work. And by the time I went to Catholic school, I really, really had to study to try to learn and understand it and do well. So my study habits was on point. I was getting it, but I just was not understanding the work, and I was getting bad grades. And I felt like all of the black students at that school was going through the same things. There was just no assistance for us. So by my 8th grade year, when you're supposed to be about to graduate and go to high school and shit like that, my parents took me out of there. And at the time I was distraught about it because I had gone through the process to create friends and finally become comfortable. And I wanted to graduate with my friends, and I was really emotional about it. But they sent me to Greenbelt Middle in Greenbelt, Maryland. I hadn't been in public school since 4th grade. So now I'm going back in 8th grade. And when I tell you everything had gone to hell, I was like, what the fuck? Like, I went to Greenbelt. I didn't know how to dress. But I was confident, you know. I learned be whoever you want to be in private school. So, you know, I was wearing shit like green and white polo shirts with red shoes and shit, just because I liked the shoes and just because I liked the shirt, but I wasn't matching nothing. And, you know, I guess in the time that I was going from public school, you come back to public school, they will kill you for shit like that. They cook your ass, you know what I'm saying? Boy, what are those on your feet? This and that, blah, 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 this whole shit. They would really kill your confidence. So I think private school was a blessing in disguise in that sense, because they was definitely eating my ass up when I went back to public school for the way I was dressing and the way I was moving. And I talked white and all types of shit, you know. But, or as they say, talked white. I was speaking proper. Speaking like a nigga with some smarts on him. And, you know, it's funny because with all of that, it never really shook my confidence because I had already gone through the other part of it in private school. But that afro was back. I'll tell you that much. That last year I was in, that summer, I didn't get no type of haircut. I was like, I thought I was slick. I was hoping my father wasn't going to notice. And I remember my father was like, you're going to have to do something to that hair. You know, but you're there for school. You don't need to be getting distracted. You don't need people talking to you about it. You need to just focus on school. And I was like, oh, man, this nigga cramping my style again. Like, I'm back, baby. I'm back in public school, baby. You know what I'm saying? I'm back. And I just could not be great. So I think I had got like, I was scheduled to get braids eventually, but something happened and I wasn't able to get it before the first day. And my father was a little sick about it, but he'll be all right. And I went to public school, and I never forget, I went to 8th grade at Greenbelt Middle, and the first day I'm sitting in science class, and somebody takes a spring out of the pen and throws it in my hair. And that spring is in my hair. I had no clue because my afro was so big I couldn't feel it. And I guess the running joke in the class was they was trying to wait to see how long it was going to take before I found the spring. Keep in mind, I even washed my hair multiple times. And because my hair is so thick and everything like that, I never found the goddamn spring. So eventually one day I was sitting in class and this girl is picking at my hair and I don't even barely know him. I'm like, yo, what are you doing in my hair? And it was a little wild. I'm not going to lie. Public school was wild as hell. But they was sitting there picking through my hair. And I was like, and she's like, I found it. I was like, yo, what is this? And sure enough, she said, like, they threw a spring in my head. And then I remember stuff like that. I remember stuff like, same. I told you all my process already. I used to comb my hair for about 30, 40 minutes every morning and everything like that. That didn't change, but I could go to school and I'm talking about in the first 5 minutes of walking through the door, somebody would come through and take their whole ass handprint and put it in my hair and ruin my shit. And it's just like, yo. And I'm in public school and I'm like around some real gangsta ass type niggas. Like I ain't been around this type of environment in a minute. So you're not just gonna turn around on some shit like, man, come on, man, what the fuck? You gonna have to fight. So I just used to eat it. You know what I'm saying? And it's funny, I would come home sometimes and my parents would be like, yo, what happened to your hair? And I was just like, I just told them the truth. You got to keep people out your hair. And I'm like, it's not going to work like that, ma. Hate to tell you. But I always found ways to cope and make friends by being funny or being personable or whatever the case may be. I knew how to navigate myself, and people always clung to me in a magnetic kind of way anyway. So I wasn't too stressed about it, but I definitely stood out. Something was different. I was looked at. It was still that Michael Jackson thing. He looks like Michael Jackson. Oh my God. I hadn't heard that in so long at that point. I mean, I was still hearing it every day, but when you go to one school for 3 years, from 5th, 6th, and 7th grade at private school, eventually, you look like Michael Jackson one time, but then after that, like, we know what you look like, nigga. It's not that deep. But going to a new school where everybody, yeah, that's the kid who looked like Michael Jackson. That's a new kid. He looked like Michael Jackson. And it was back, and I was salty about it. But the thing is, around this time, you start to like girls a little bit. I had my first crush already when I was in Catholic school and all this type of stuff. And I'm seeing these public school girls, and they looking like, ooh, y'all looking right. Like, what's up, man? But I just did not qualify. I was looked at as little kid cute, definitely not grown ass man cute in the way that, people was. And I remember as I'm sitting here going through my memory bank, right? That was the first time I was ever introduced to like sexual shit. And I was like confused because, I'm in class and they said, there's this girl. I'm not going to say her name. They said, there's this girl. Let's just call her K. There's this girl K. And, she said she want to suck your dick. And I'm like, what? I didn't even know what a dick was. I didn't know what it meant to suck a dick. I didn't know. I knew I had a penis. I hadn't necessarily heard dick before. Like, and I damn sure didn't know what head was. And they were like, yeah, she gave somebody head under the desk. Like, she give everybody head, this and that. And I was like, I don't know if I want that. I was just the new guy, I guess. I don't know. But outside of that one experience, I don't remember anybody liking me like in a attractive way at that age. I was seen as little kid cute, I guess. And that was kind of what I just accepted about myself. It's what I had been accepting about myself when I was in private school. Like I said, I had the afro and all that. I was very pro-black. I damn sure didn't like no white girls. So That's no offense, but hey, that's just not my cup of tea. Even from the time I was little, my parents drilled it in my head, kind of like, you gonna bring home a white girl, ain't you? I was like, shit, y'all know I'm not bringing home no white girl. You crazy, you know? But yeah, man, I just accepted that there wasn't really many options for me either, being in private school, because I didn't like white girls. And by the time I'm in public school, nobody giving me no play with that damn afro and being unmatched. And, I like Pokemon and motherfucking Dragon Ball Z and shit. And there was other guys who liked it too, but I'm sure they wasn't as open about it. They was more into like, they only knew them for like football or basketball or sports or whatever the fuck, So those was the guys who they were probably more likely to like. And then came high school. I ended up going to Eleanor Roosevelt High School in Greenbelt, Maryland. And it's funny because I had started getting braids, and because my father was definitely like, you damn sure not about to go to high school with this afro. Like, you really need high school serious, bro. You need to focus. So I used to get braids and shit. I had different friends who would braid my hair and everything like that. And it was the end of the Michael Jackson era, finally. I had something that looked normal. But they still knew, because every once in a while I would take them braids out and I rocked that fro for a couple of days just so they didn't forget. I still had that swag, but most of the time I had braids, or I would it got so long, got to a point where I could pull it back into a ponytail. And I was getting much better grades now, because like I said, since I left private school, it's the craziest thing. In private school, I'm getting C's and D's and shit like that. Go back to public school, I'm getting straight A's off rip every year. I'm like, what the fuck is that? That shit is easy now. Still had to put in the extra work. Still had to stay after school for tutoring and everything else like that. But I was getting my A's, you know what I'm saying? And it's wild because I remember the first time in high school that somebody liked me, and I could tell that they liked me. And I was just so like, oh shit. Like, they like me. From there, it was like I really started focusing on girls a little more and shit like that. I had my cousin there. I was comfortable, this and that. And my hair dynamic started to change because it went from loving my afro to just loving having these different hairstyles. One of my friends, Janelle, she used to give me the Iverson cornrows and all these different designs and shit. I was like, oh shit. Like, I used to be getting 2-strand twists from my homegirl Deja, who's still my best friend to this day, and like all different types of things. It was just exciting to explore these different black hairstyles and braids and shit. And it really boosted my confidence in a way that was like, well, I'm not for everybody, but I'm for somebody. Somebody likes me. And I remember at that time, Lil Wayne was really hot. Like, everybody loved Lil Wayne. Lil Wayne was the man. I could not stand this thing. I just felt like he didn't talk about any. I felt he's so overrated. My favorite rapper's Common. You know what I'm saying? So like, and I had just discovered hip hop for real, probably maybe a couple years before. So I'm just like, yo, he don't even say nothing. Like, why does everybody like Wayne? And Wayne's influence was so heavy that I just remember everybody was getting dreads at this time. And I was like, I would never get dreads. I think I probably made some sort of public declaration about the idea that I would never get dreads. I would never follow in the footsteps of Wayne. But secretly, I love locks. I was like, that's so cool, I always wanted them until Lil Wayne came around. And I remember having a conversation with my uncle, and he had asked me about, he said, you never thought about getting locks, So it must have came up because of something I said. And I was like, I always wanted locks for a long time now, but, Lil Wayne, he was just like, so since when did you start caring what people think about you? I was flabbergasted. I said, God damn, this nigga serious. It makes a lot of sense. Since when did I start giving a fuck about what people think? So just after that, I talked to my mama and I was like, I want to get locked. So she set up a little thing. She said, are you sure? She told me how serious, how important it was, And my uncle made a compelling kind of point, which was that you never know what you might be blocking. And she told me to do some research before I just decided I wanted to get locks, And, I started Googling shit and learning a little bit about like the Rastafarian culture and like this idea that like your hair is like your antennas, like your connection to God in some regard, and how it is much deeper than just a hairstyle. You know what I'm saying? Like, I was hooked. I was into the shit. I was on my shit. Like, I was like, okay, yeah, I want to get me some locks. So I went and I got my hair locked, and this was my new sense of like cultural pride in my identity. Because when I got the locks, it was like, this is me. I have locks now. You know what I'm saying? But the energy was bananas. It just switched up. I went from being like little kid cute to like, ooh, he kind of fine. Even my best friend at the time, from back in the day, you know what I'm saying? My best friend before we fell out, unfortunately. I wish we never did, but she was even like, I'm not gonna lie, you kind of sexy. And I was like, what when did this happen? What is the energy shift? I had first got my locks. There was this girl at the school who I guess did hair at a salon or something on the side, probably her auntie's salon or something over in Forestville. Forestville was the hood, you know what I'm saying? But I ain't had no business in Forestville. But she was like, yeah, you should let me do your hair. So I was like, all right, I guess so. It's cool. I'll come through. Had my father go drop me off in Forestville at this shop. She came outside wearing this tight ass dress. Must have had on the push-up bra or something. The titties was titty for sure. My father was like, does she always dress like this? I was like, I guess so. Like, innocent as hell, confused. So, she sitting there, she does my hair, retwists it and everything like that. I'm extra shy. I'm uncomfortable in a new environment. Even though I'm a whole 16, 17 years old or whatever the fuck. And I never forget, she put me under the dryer and everything like that. When she went to put the dryer on my head, she had got up on top of me, on my lap, with this dress on, with her titties in my face, pulling the thing over my head. And I'm sitting there just with titties in my face, like, okay, like, I don't know how to move, anything like that. And she puts her face right next to my ear, and she says, you could get it right. And I said, thank you. Thank you? What was I thinking? What the fuck was that? I was so naive. I was just so naive. I didn't even know how to handle the energy I was getting. She was laughing, like she could tell I was just cute and innocent. She was like, you just don't know. I didn't even understand what you could get it meant at that time. And I was like 16, 17 years old. My parents never talked to me about sex or nothing like that. We're going to save that on a whole nother episode. But yeah, man, the shit was crazy. Like, what I did know is that once the lock started to solidify and like they really locked, it wasn't just no loose Shirley Temple looking curls and shit like that. I was never going back. And since then I've had 3 sets of locks. I'm on my 3rd set right now. My locks got long. They got all the way down to about my ass. And then eventually I had some spiritual regrowing to do. So I let them go. I cut them down to the new growth with like a fade on the side. And that was my hairstyle for a minute until those locks got down to about my back. Like maybe like little past shoulder length. Cut my hair again down to a buzz cut, something nobody ever expected at my grown ass age. And 2 years ago, I started my set of locks again, and here I am now. Hair just plays a really important part of identity. I've been sitting here talking about my afro and from the afro how it ended up in locks, and I mean, there's so many other things associated with my memories of hair. But confidence wise, I go through so many phases. We probably all do, I went through phases with my locks where it's like a big part of the reason I had cut my hair when I said I had spiritual regrowth to do. What I meant by that, I don't think I've ever clarified this to anybody except for one of my exes, but there was a time when if my hair wasn't done or if it wasn't in a certain kind of design, I just didn't feel confident. I didn't feel neat. I didn't feel like I was together. I felt too like scruffy or Rastafari or some shit like that. And that was the whole reason why when I first started getting locks, I was intrigued. And I had lost that. I had lost that in the desire to be cute or be seen, or, you know, knowing that people liked my hair a certain kind of way and that was the standard style. And at the point where ego started to take over, I felt like I needed to let it go. I needed to be uncomfortable again. My hair was such a part of my identity. As I started to get older through high school, you know, I kind of had a real live, like DC nigga mentality kind of, you know what I'm saying? The way I dressed, the way I moved. You know, I had started interning with this group called Cool Kids Forever Films. And, you know, a lot of them was ex-street dudes who was now cleaned up they act completely and, you know, into film. And these are the people I was learning film from, you know, and you start to get a sense of identity. You used to get to start to learn how to move through situations and be street smart in the area. You know, most of our work was in DC. We was doing music videos. It was a lot of shit that was going on. This is before everybody had started doing music videos for real. Like now everybody's a videographer. But there was a time when it was still kind of like a niche kind of thing. And, you know, you learn how to navigate the streets a little bit because there'd be some hood situations that come up in the middle of shooting. And, you know, my dreads in DC, you can get typecast very easy. You know, they'll assume who you are and how you are because you have dreads. Police will, you know, profile you and everything else like that. And I had got to a point when I had moved to New York. I moved to New York to go to school at the new school because I had to transfer from Bowie State. It just wasn't doing what I was needing education-wise. So I ended up going to New York and transferring. And I never forget, I was so used to being profiled for my hair, even though I still took pride in my hair, but I was used to what came with it. I was confused. I was in Crown Heights and there was a Rastafarian nigga who was out there and I was walking and dude was just kind of like staring at me. I didn't know what it was, but I was just, you know, being smart. I'm in a neighborhood I'm not familiar with, whatever. And he put his hand to his chest in a straight line up. And he said, "Much blessings, brother. Respect, respect, respect." And I'm like, respect, you know what I'm saying? And I was a little confused, but then I started noticing in most instances in social settings where things seemed shady, people was giving me all of this love for my locks. Like it was a admiration thing. It was like they assumed, you know, it's a lot of West Indian culture out there in New York. They assumed I must have been Jamaican or something. And because I had these long locks that I was tapped in on the spiritual side of things, which I was, but it was weird. I didn't even know how to receive that kind of love that I was getting random. People loved my hair. And it was almost like I was afraid it was going to be a distraction from me learning. So maybe the same things that was going on in my younger years where my hair was thought to be a distraction to the learning environment, now I had accepted unknowingly as an adult with my locks. Like, yo, I'm getting way too much attention from girls. I don't want to, you know, I came out at the time I was dating somebody and I didn't want to feel tempted to cheat or like explore other options. And I was having a really hard time processing all of the positive responses that I was getting to my hair. And who knows, maybe that was me trying to fake be hard. Maybe that was me trying to go against my identity that was always so nice and happy and jubilant and take my kindness for weakness. I liked that little idea that I was seen as a little bit rough because of my hair or something. And now I'm in New York and everybody's giving me love for my hair. And in a different sense, it was also refreshing to be receiving so much love for my hair and respect for my hair. But I just didn't know how to process it at that time. I was probably about 20 or 21 at the time, man. And I don't know. it was hard. It was hard to figure out, but I cut my hair because I'm pretty sure it was fear based. And I don't like being afraid. I don't like feeling afraid of anything, especially when you start to find a way that you can cope and feel confident in who you are and what you are and how you are. I was just thinking about it too much, and I said it's time to let it go. So I cut my hair, and I just knew that I needed to be uncomfortable again. I was way too comfortable with my identity. I was way too comfortable with being from the DMV and what my hair meant to me. And I was learning a lot of things at the time too. I was learning a lot of things about my own intrinsic flaws, you know. I was learning a lot of things about homophobia that existed inside of me that never needed to exist, because I didn't really have any type of fear or hate for gay people or lesbians or anything like that. It was just a part of the environment that I grew up in. And I started learning a lot about like spirituality and like the law of attraction and like manifestation and attracting the things that you want towards you in all situations and not assuming the worst in situations. And I was learning about all of these different things from being in New York in this new environment and the school I was going to, and you know, political views and shit like that. And I just knew that I needed to change who I was at the core, at the root. And the best way for me to do that was to attack the thing that I was most connected to, which was my hair. And I told myself, if I can let go of my hair and still be okay and survive, I can make it through anything. I can be in a new city. I can have a new outlook. I can grow. I need to always be growing. And I wanted to ensure that I was always growing. So I don't know, man. That's my hair story. That's how I got to where I am today. And with all of this understanding, with all of the journey that's come along, I can't wait for my hair to grow back down to my ass again. This time I'm looking forward to having some salt and pepper in it. You know, some grains of wisdom. That's what I would call it, some grains of wisdom and experience. In my 30s is going to be crazy, but you know, man, I appreciate the opportunity to live and learn on a level that goes beyond surface level, you know, academia, but just from life experiences. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's something about this whole thing that I'm so I don't talk about a lot, but I'm so connected to it, you know? Even now I have moments sometimes where I feel like, man, I need to get me a little haircut, because, you know, I be having to shave. I got the taper with my locks, and I be thinking like, oh, it'll look so much cleaner, it'll look so much nicer and shit like that. But I'm really learning to just rock out, especially after this quarantine. I'm learning to just rock out and embrace my hair for whatever it is in its natural sense. And that doesn't have anything to do with the sense of professionalism that I have or the sense of anything. Like, it's just me, man. And at the end of the day, I just want to be me, and I want you to be you. And anybody who's listening to this shit, I really hope that, you know, you can tap in with your own preconceived notions about yourself, either that were put onto you by society or put onto you by your family or yourself, and just combat that with love. Because at the end of the day, that's all this shit is about. That's the only thing that my hair is about. That's the only thing that any of this experience is about, is love. So on this episode, I'm going to leave you with that, and look forward to the next one. This is the first one out the gate. Rock with me. This is Back in the Days. I'm exploring that nostalgia.
Back in the days when I was young, I'm not a kid anymore. But some days I sit and wish I was a kid again. Back in the days when I was young, I'm not a kid anymore. But some days I sit and wish I was a kid. And everybody say, days when I was young, I'm not a kid anymore. But some days I sit and wish I was a kid. And everybody say, days when I was young, I'm not a kid.